All right. So, this is my Perry Mason Season 2, Episode 1 review. And let me just get the Della Reese storyline out of the way. She decides to cheat on her girlfriend. Why? Why give her that storyline? I mean, why does that even have to be a storyline? I mean, ugh. The storyline I would like to see, this is the 1930s. There's bound to be homophobia. That storyline I would like to see for her. Not this. So she meets with a potential client, and as she's rattling on and on about springs, which Della care care couldn't care less about, you could see that she's like, somebody kill me. And then she sees this cutie that gets her attention, and she excuses herself to go powder her nose, which in Della's case was code for I need to have a smoke. So as she's doing this, she walks by the woman that she has her eye on, and so the said woman follows her into the restroom. And they flirt. She offers to Della to save her from this date. She thinks by the way she's talking, she thinks it's a date. At first I thought these people knew each other. That may be that I just didn't remember what Hazel looked like, or that because there was an obvious chime jump that, you know, she's back in the dating pool. But no, she even admits that she's involved with someone. So she this woman gives her card, like one does when you're, trying to get a date. And then while Hazel is sleeping, she takes the card and calls this woman. And she's sneaking around doing it, which is odd because I thought that they didn't sleep in the same bed because they didn't want to be seen together, because, at this time homosexuality is illegal. So, okay. There's a lot of things that they seem to have forgotten about. Like, being gay was illegal, and they even said in last season that, that they can only see each other at certain times because they didn't want to be caught. Walking out of someone's room first thing in the morning and probably wearing the same thing you wore the night before. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. Anyway, so they flirt with this woman. So it seemed like they're going to see each other, which, oh great. And who knows, maybe this is somehow going to enter into the storyline A. And that this isn't going to be just a totally separate thing. But right now, not interesting. Not interesting at all. Cheating is never interesting to me. Unless you have a really damn good reason. And no, this isn't. So far, we're given no reason why she's doing this, other than, as she told the DA, that she has room for excitement in her life. There's a lot of ways you can have excitement in your life, Della, without cheating. That's just okay. And speaking of the I want to see homophobia, because, historically accurate, but the DA, he asks, how is her relationship with Hazel? So he caught on that she's thinking of cheating, for one thing. And for the second thing, he seemed totally cool with the fact that she's in a relationship with a woman. Again, this is the 30s. It is great that there are people, and I'm sure that there were people in the 30s who were allies. I'm not going to say nobody was an ally. You were either homosexual or straight and hated the idea of homosexuality. I'm not going to do that. But most people weren't okay with homosexuality, so far the two main male characters, don't seem to have a problem with the fact that Della's a lesbian at all. So, yeah, that seriously annoyed me. So, with that out of the way, let us get to the actual show. So, it starts off with a man walking down a corridor. It looks like a waiter. Okay, fine. And it looks like a guy was going to grab him to, get a drink or whatever. But he didn't have anything on his tray. Okay, again, nothing to be shocked about. I mean, he probably emptied his tray and was going back to get more. So he keeps walking down, and then he goes into a locker and just grabs a suitcase. And walks up the stairs. And I didn't realize at the time it was a boat. And so I just thought, okay, he's done with his shift after a long night's work, so he's going home. Didn't think anything of it. He puts his suitcase down and ends up throwing a Molotov cocktail onto a bunch of rags and leaves the boat. Now, based on who we were introduced to later, I thought this was Brooks. He looked just like Brooks, but apparently not. So, he gets on the boat. He gets onto a rowboat, and actually, it looks like it was more of a motorboat. And they go off as the gambling boat goes up in flames. All right. So, and we see a guy standing there flipping what looks like a poker chip, because it certainly didn't look like a regular coin. So then we cut to an apartment building and a milkman leaving milk for everybody. And Perry Mason opens the door. So obviously has to have been a time jump, because Perry had just left his family home. Lupe convinced him to let her have the home. She seemed to turn it into a speakeasy, so I failed to see what was the point. But anyway. So he drinks the milk right out of the bottle, which is totally this version of Perry Mason. And then he's desperately trying to find his clothes. He has pants and one sock. So he's looking for the rest of his clothes. And we see him he's on a motorbike, and he goes to his court date, which it turns out, before he goes to court, he goes to his office, and he has a new secretary. And he's like, what the hell? Who are you? And Della's explaining that because she's his associate now, that and how they have the money for a secretary. And so she's talking about this latest case, and he's doodling, half listing, basically making mentions of names, and oh, I wish I was like you. Just being very childish. And Della calls him out on it. She's like, you're the one who wanted to do civil cases. He still has PTSD from, he just can't get over this case, which was the subject of last season. He just can't get that case out of his mind. And so he's like, yeah, I'm paying attention. She's like, well, this is civil cases, so you've got it. So they go to the court. They go to court, and I thought I recognized the grocery store owner, and turns out it was Sean Astin. Okay. And he is suing another grocery store owner who, it turns out, took everything that he said he created for his store and used it for his own. Which, technically, Perry wasn't wrong that, that this guy, created this stuff specifically for this brand. So he can't exactly go and use that insider knowledge to create his own. Technically not wrong, but he felt like shit because, he not only just put a guy out of business, but he totally destroyed his livelihood. And to make matters worse, the woman who was sitting in the courtroom, who seemed to be on this young kid's side, is his new secretary. So Perry's like, oh, fuck my life. And he's getting himself into motorbike accidents because he's just concentrating on this case that ended in a mistrial. And but he wins the case, and the grocery store owner was like, oh, I want to destroy him, this is war. It's like, what is wrong with you? And Perry even calls him an asshole at the trial, which I thought was awesome. It's like, okay, I'll do what you want, but you're still an asshole. And so they basically, destroyed this kid. And Perry feels like shit. Della's like, come on, we won the case. I'm not happy about it either, but I'm not going to let it bother me. And even the DA is like telling him the same thing, that actually he's even worse. He's like, oh, well, there's no real justice. We just have to give people the illusion of one. So technically he was just saying what Della was saying, but in a much shittier way. And Perry's like, nah, not going for that. So he walks off. And so he even asks, so what's going to happen after this? And now I'd like to know what is going to happen, because I really thought that maybe this wasn't a completely separate case, and that the grocery store owner is going to turn out to be something to do with plot A. I still don't know. That still could be the case. Maybe this was only so the new secretary would probably quit, because I don't know how she's related to the guy that got railroaded. So maybe this was just, maybe it's a brother, maybe it's a husband. We don't know. We don't know what the relationship's like. All we know is that he's lost everything. And so yeah, I highly doubt that she would want to come work for Perry after that. Even though it is painfully obvious that he's not happy about what happened. But that's probably a way of her, exiting stage left. So, that's basically his storyline. Now let's go to Paul Drake, because he's got an even smaller storyline. More interesting than Della's, but about the same amount of screen time. So Strickland comes up to him, and this is where I'm like, oh, continuity, please. Strickland comes up to him and says, oh, Mason tells me you need work. And this is after Perry had come to his birthday party, because Clara invited him, because Paul's like, why? She's like, you should have done this anyway. And Perry tried to give him money, and he thanked him for the photos. Now, we did not see him giving him photos. We saw him seeing an envelope from Strickland, but not from Drake. So either this was something else that Strickland gave him, or this, when Strickland says, oh, Mason says that you need work. Hasn't he already been working for you? There's a content, there's something missing here. But Perry tried to give him money, and of course Paul is too proud to take it. And I'm just like, it's his birthday. Say it's a present. Because, you didn't buy him anything for his birthday. So tell him that it's a birthday present. Then, he kind of has to take it. But no, because, he's living with his brother-in-law. He doesn't have a lot of work, because they're doing civil cases as opposed to criminal. Because Perry just can't handle doing criminal cases after this last one is haunting him. And so Strickland gives him a case, which they think that some bigwig is about to get killed, is what I gleaned from this. And because this meeting between two people is going to take place in a colored hotel, that's why they need Paul, because, well, obvious. So he takes Clara and the baby, and he's doing a photo shoot and watching, what's happening behind them on the stairs. But Clara knows that this is happening, because she's like, what is he doing? So she's aware, which is good, that he didn't just out of the blue say, hey, let's do this, and give her no context. So that's good. It's refreshing to see people actually communicate. That's a refreshing thing. So he's taking pictures, he's watching them leave, he's following them out, and that's the last we see. And now another, this isn't a continuity error, but logic error. He's developing these photos, and his wife knocks on the door and says, I just want to brush my teeth. And he's like, oh, okay, come in. He had just put a picture up to be developed. You don't open the door. The whole point isn't for it to be a dark room. So, and somehow these pictures are supposed to develop? Because there are 2 pictures that are blank at this point. So, maybe he figures, if I lose a couple, no big deal, because, they're just the same picture. Ah! That just bugged me. So, that's pretty much all we know about Paul this episode. So let's go back to Brooks. Now, while I'm doing that, let me see, when did LA get their first baseball team? Okay, let's see, when did LA get their first team? Ugh. Okay, so they got one in the 1800s, so that's not helpful. Here we are, Major League Baseball. So it's not till 58 when the Dodgers went from New York to LA. I thought that was the first one, but I didn't remember what year it was exactly. Definitely not the 30s. So anyway, back to Brooks. So Brooks meets up with his father, and after he obviously was having an affair of his own, because why the hell not? And his date is trying to recover from the fact that he's into an asphyxiation kink. So that's great, which makes me wonder if she's ever going to truly see him again, because even though she still said, "Oh, I'm working on the boat tonight," I don't know if, because she's like, that's different. I don't think she liked it at all. And Brooks strikes me as the kind of guy who probably doesn't care. But I could be wrong. We'll never know. So he meets up with his family, and he sees his dad. So he goes to say hi. And his dad, lets him know that he saw the fire that he caused. And so Brooks is like, oh, well, oops. And he's still going on about how he wants to bring a baseball team to LA, which is a noble goal. But at the same time, he's willing to kill the competition, literally. There's a great parallel between him and that grocery store owner. Only the grocery store owner is, not doing illegal things. But, because we haven't heard, we don't know how many people died, if anybody died. We don't know if there were any casualties, or if just the boat was lost, or whatever. We know nothing. And, so his father says, I think you should, stick with your charity work, and puts his hand on his shoulder rather menacingly. It wasn't a fatherly pat. It carried more weight to that. Like it was more of a threat. And Brooks was looking at his father's hand in just that way. Like, this is not a fatherly advice type thing. This is more sinister. So he's definitely suspect number one for me. And so you go through this show thinking that Brooks is going to be the big bad of the season. Nope, no, he's not. So then oh, I forgot that Perry also is back with Lupe, sort of. He meets up with Lupe, and, you know, possibly in 3 days they're going to go away together. It didn't happen the last time. It's not happening this time either. But anyway, so back to Brooks. So he is meeting, he's playing horsey with his sons, and each one, instead of shooting the brother, they shoot the horse, which is hilarious. And he had earlier in the day introduced this well-known pitcher, and that they were going to bring a team to LA. And you could see the father is none too happy to hear this, which makes you wonder why. I mean, I can understand him not thinking it's going to happen, but even when it sounded like it was a done deal, maybe he was just he just didn't believe, but he didn't sound in like he wanted this to happen or something. So Brooks goes to Holcomb because of course Holcomb's involved in all this. It goes up to Holcomb and says what his father told him, that, you shouldn't have done this at night. You should have done it during the day when there's fewer witnesses. And I'm like, you jerk. I mean, you could have at least said, oh, by the way, this isn't me saying it, it's my dad. This is a message from my dad or something. So, yeah, Holcomb was none too thrilled with the situation, because he's like, you're the muscle. And he's like, more than the muscle, partner. And so you can see there's tension there. And I still want someone to knock that damn poker chip out of his hand. I really do. He's annoying. So he goes onto the boat, and it turns out nobody wants to come to LA because they just don't see LA as a viable place for a Major League Baseball team. That's not big enough. And Brooks is losing his cool about, what's wrong with LA. And so they finish their conversation and get off the boat, and he reaches into his pocket and realizes he forgot to get that pitcher's signature for his son's baseball card. And he tries to call after him, and I don't know if he was just going to drive home or if he was going to try to drive after them and say, oh, could you sign this for my kid? But instead you hear some rustling, he turns, and you hear a shot. So we don't know who shot him. Like I said, right now I'm thinking that it's the father who did this, and that Holcomb probably pulled the trigger. Or if not Holcomb, he got one of his underlings to do it, because that's just like how Holcomb rolls. And he probably, they both had motive. The father wasn't thrilled with what his son was doing with his activity, trying to do something that isn't going to happen. So he probably saw this as frivolous. So of course, what you do is you kill the person instead of anything else. But he has shown that he's not above doing illegal shit by, you know, burning 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 up a barge. So, and Holcomb, well, we already know he's a dirty cop. So, obviously if the father said, and he already has a wedge with him, with Brooks, because he thinks they're partners, but Brooks called him, you know, just the muscle. So he might have easily been willing to, you know, listen to the father and take him on. Or maybe Holcomb just did it on his own. It's like, oh, we're not partners? Okay, you're gone. So either one, either theory is viable. Um, so you know that it won't be long before Perry's on the case because, you know, he probably wants to, because he has such a strong sense of justice, he probably wants to make sure that this is decided correctly. Plus, he probably feels that this might excise the previous case, which ended up in a mistrial, and he feels is a personal failure. So, and I don't know, does he know that Holcomb was involved? I think he does know that Holcomb was involved, just not to what extent. So, I'm sure the idea of taking on someone who is in the orbit of Holcomb probably is also a nice carrot for Perry. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything from this episode. I don't believe so. I think I covered everything. Obviously not linear, but anybody who knows my videos knows that this is about the most linear I've ever been. But with that, I will see you in the next video.